The sun was setting outside our window, painting the walls in soft gold and orange. It was one of those quiet evenings where everything felt still, the kind of moment that usually made me grateful to be home, but that night something felt different. She sat across from me on the couch, her hands resting in her lap, not fidgeting, not reaching for her phone, just still in a way that made my chest tighten. I had been scrolling through something on my phone, not really paying attention when she spoke. Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made me put the phone down immediately. "I need to do something," she said, and paused just long enough for me to feel the shift in the air. "I need to be on my own for a while." I waited for the rest of it, the explanation, the reason why she was saying this now after 3 years of building a life together, but she just looked at me, her eyes steady, not sad, not angry, just certain. "What do you mean on your own?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, like maybe this was about a trip, a short break, something temporary. "I mean I need to live alone," she said. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not half of us." The words landed softly, but they hit hard. I felt them in my stomach, a slow sinking feeling, like the floor had tilted beneath me. I wanted to laugh it off, to say, "Come on, we are fine, we are good together," but the look on her face stopped me. She wasn't being dramatic, she wasn't punishing me, this wasn't about something I had done wrong. That was the hardest part. There was no mistake to fix, no argument to win back. "You are asking me to leave," I said. The words felt foreign in my mouth. "I'm asking for space," she corrected me gently but firmly. "Real space, not you moving to the guest room or us taking a weekend apart. I'm asking to do life alone for a while, to see what grows when I'm not leaning on someone else." "And what about us?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "I don't know," she said honestly. "That is the point. I don't want to make promises right now, because that wouldn't be fair to either of us. If I say wait for me, then this isn't really independence, it is just distance with a safety net, and I need to jump without the net this time." I stared at her, trying to find the person I had fallen in love with in her face. She was still there, same eyes, same hands, same quiet strength, but something had changed inside her. Something had grown tired of the comfort we had built and was reaching for something else, something she couldn't name yet. I thought about all the things I could say. I could beg, I could get angry, I could list all the reasons we should stay together, the shared rent, the inside jokes, the way she made coffee in the morning, the way I knew how to make her laugh when she was stressed. I could remind her of the future we had sketched out over late night conversations, apartments we might buy, trips we might take, children we might one day hold. But none of that felt right, because none of it was about her. It was about me and what I wanted, and she had just asked for the one thing I couldn't give her if I stayed, the space to be truly alone. So I nodded slowly. The movement felt heavy, like I was moving through water. "Yes," I said. The word was barely a whisper, but it filled the whole room. She let out a breath she had been holding. I think she expected a fight. She had braced for tears, accusations. Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable but thick with everything left unsaid. I started packing that night, not because I had to leave immediately, but because staying would have felt like pretending the decision hadn't been made. I moved slowly, folding sweaters, placing books into a box, rolling up the rug we had bought at a flea market our first summer together. Each item carried a memory, but I did not linger on them. I just packed. She sat at the kitchen table, watching me, not helping, not stopping me, just being present in the ending of us. "You don't have to go tonight," she said once when I lifted the box of kitchen things we shared. "Yes, I do," I replied, and she understood. When the suitcases were zipped and my guitar was slung over my shoulder, I stood by the door, the same door we had painted together, laughing when we got splatters on the floor, the same door we had walked through 1,000 times coming home to each other. I turned to look at her one last time. She was standing by the couch, arms wrapped around herself, not crying, not yet, but her chin was trembling slightly. "Thank you," I said. The words surprised even me, but they were true. "Thank you for telling me instead of just staying and growing quiet inside. Thank you for being honest even when it hurt." Her eyes filled then, but she did not look away. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," I said, and I meant it with everything in me. "I still do," I added. And then I left. I did not slam the door. I did not pause dramatically on the landing. I just walked out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind me, a small quiet sound that marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. The hallway felt longer than usual. My footsteps echoed softly. I did not look back because I knew if I did I would see her standing there in the rectangle of light from our apartment and I would not be able to leave. Outside the night air was cool against my skin. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing deeply. The city hummed around me, cars passing, people laughing in the distance, life continuing exactly as it had before, but for me everything had changed. I hailed a cab and gave the driver an address, a friend's place where I could crash for a few nights. I did not look back at the building as we pulled away. I just stared straight ahead, watching the street lights blur past the windows. In the back seat, surrounded by my belongings in 2 suitcases and a guitar case, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was not peace, not yet, but it was acceptance. This was not a punishment, it was not a failure, it was a choice she had made and I had honored it, and in that honoring I had given her the greatest gift I could offer: trust. The cab turned a corner and our street disappeared behind us. I closed my eyes and let the motion of the car carry me forward into the unknown. That night, lying on a couch that was not mine, surrounded by shadows that were not familiar, I thought about what she had said about needing to jump without a net, and for the first time I understood she was not leaving me, she was reaching for herself. And sometimes love means letting go, not because you want to but because the other person needs the space to grow. And so I had let go, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a quiet hope that wherever she landed she would find what she was looking for, even if it was not me waiting there when she arrived. The city slept around me, but I stayed awake, watching the slow dance of headlights across the ceiling, knowing that tomorrow would be the first day of a life without her, and wondering if either of us would ever be the same again. The first morning without her felt wrong in my bones. I woke up on a couch that was not mine, in a room that smelled like someone else's laundry detergent. Sunlight cut across the floor in a way I did not recognize, and for a full minute I forgot where I was. Then it came back. The conversation, the suitcases, the quiet click of the door closing behind me. I sat up slowly, my body heavy like I had been underwater too long. My friend had left for work already. A note on the counter said, "Help yourself to anything, be back late." I made coffee standing in a kitchen that was not mine, using a mug that had a chip on the rim, and I thought about how she would have winced at that chip, how she always said a broken mug deserved retirement, not continued service. That first week was a fog. I moved through the days like a ghost, going to work, answering emails, making small talk with co-workers who did not know my world had ended. I smiled when expected, I nodded at the right moments, but inside I was hollow, a shell walking around carrying a silence so loud it drowned out everything else. My friends tried to help. They invited me out for drinks, they sent texts asking how I was holding up, they used phrases like "you will get through this" and "there are plenty of fish," but their kindness felt like static noise I could not tune into, because none of them understood this was not a normal breakup. There was no cheating, no screaming match, no slow drift apart. She had not left me because I failed her, she had left to find herself, and that made it impossible to hate her, impossible to paint myself as the victim, impossible to move on using the usual scripts people follow after heartbreak. One night about 10 days in, I sat on my friend's fire escape watching the city lights blink on one by one, and I realized I had not checked her social media, not once, not out of strength but out of respect. This was her independence, and to stalk her online would be to violate the very thing she had asked for. So I had not looked. I did not know if she was sad or relieved, if she missed me or felt free, if she was sleeping in our bed or had already replaced the sheets with something new. That choice to stay away became my anchor in those early weeks. It gave me something to hold onto when the loneliness threatened to swallow me whole. I was honoring her request, and in doing so I was honoring myself too. After 3 weeks, my friend gently suggested I find my own place, something temporary while I figured things out. So I did. I found a small studio above a bookstore, the kind of place with creaky floors and a single window that looked out onto fire escapes and laundry lines. The rent was cheap, the walls were thin, but it was mine. No shared history, no ghosts in the corners, just empty space waiting to be filled. Moving in felt like starting over, not in a dramatic way but in small daily acts. I bought a single plate, a single bowl, a single mug, this time without a chip. I arranged my books on a shelf, I hung my guitar on the wall, I made my bed each morning even when I did not feel like it. These small rituals became my lifeline. Work kept me busy. I took on extra projects, freelance design work that let me lose myself in color palettes and typography for hours at a time. My hands stayed busy, my mind stayed focused, and for brief stretches I could forget the ache in my chest. But nights were harder. The studio felt vast when darkness fell, shadows stretching across the floor in unfamiliar patterns. I would lie awake listening to strangers living their lives in the apartments around me, footsteps above me, laughter from the street below, a baby crying 2 doors down. These sounds reminded me I was not alone in the world, even when I felt completely isolated. One evening in the second month I tried to cook a meal for one, pasta with sauce from a jar. It felt absurd standing at the stove waiting for water to boil for a single serving. The whole process took longer than eating it. I sat at my small table and ate slowly, staring at the wall, and I realized this was what she had wanted, this mundane loneliness, this figuring out how to exist without another person's rhythms, shaping your own. Winter came early that year, a cold snap in November that sent everyone rushing for coats and scarves. I walked through the city wrapped in layers, watching my breath cloud in the air, couples huddled together sharing gloves, families laughing as they carried shopping bags home from the market, and for the first time since leaving I did not feel envy. I felt something softer, something like understanding. She had needed this space not because she did not love me, but because love had become a cage, even a comfortable one, still a cage, and she needed to step outside to remember how to breathe on her own. Around Thanksgiving my phone buzzed with a text from a mutual friend. They are worried about you, they want to know if you are seeing anyone yet. I typed a reply, then deleted it, then typed again, finally sending just I'm okay, no details, no drama, just a simple truth that felt more complicated than it appeared. That night I sat by my window watching snow begin to fall, soft flakes drifting down to blanket the fire escapes and rooftops. I thought about her. I wondered if she was warm, if she was happy, if she had found what she was looking for, and for the first time the wondering did not hurt. It was just a quiet thought passing through like the snow outside. The real shift happened slowly, so gradual I did not notice it until it had already occurred. One morning in December I woke up and realized I had dreamed about something else, not her, not us, not the apartment we had shared. I had dreamed about flying over mountains green and vast, and when I opened my eyes the first feeling was not sadness but a lightness, a sense that something inside me had untangled. I started taking walks after work, not with a destination, just wandering, letting my feet decide the route. I discovered a park I never knew existed, a small patch of green with old oak trees and a bench that faced west so you could watch the sunset without buildings blocking the view. I went there often, sitting quietly watching the sky change colors. One afternoon an older man sat beside me, not too close, just sharing the space. He did not speak at first, just watched the sky with me. After a while he said, "My wife used to love this spot. She has been gone 3 years now, but I still come here sometimes. It does not hurt as much as it used to, just feels like visiting an old friend." I nodded, understanding without needing to explain my own story. He stayed for 10 minutes, then stood stretching his back with a soft groan. He patted my shoulder once, a brief human connection, then walked away, leaving me with his words, visiting an old friend. That phrase stayed with me in the weeks that followed. I began to see my grief not as a wound to be healed but as a place to visit. Sometimes you go there, sit a while, remember what was good, what was real, what mattered, then you stand up and walk back to your life, carrying those memories without letting them anchor you in the past. By the time December turned to January I could go whole days without thinking about her, not because I had forgotten but because I had integrated the loss into who I was becoming. The pain had not disappeared but it had changed shape. It was no longer a sharp thing cutting me open, it was a quiet presence, like a stone worn smooth by time. I learned to cook for one without feeling sorry for myself. I discovered I liked jazz in the mornings and silence in the evenings. I started writing again, not for anyone, just words on paper to untangle my thoughts. I made a friend at the coffee shop downstairs. We exchanged small talk that slowly grew into real conversation. None of this felt like moving on, it felt like growing up, like finally learning how to stand on my own 2 feet without leaning on someone else to hold me upright. And through all of it I never reached out, I never sent a text or liked a photo or asked our friends for updates. I honored her request completely because I understood now that true love sometimes means giving someone the space to become who they need to be, even if that person never comes back to you. The silence between us was not empty, it was full of respect, and that respect became the foundation for whatever might come next, even if that next was nothing at all. One cold January morning I stood at my window watching the city wake up, steam rising from manhole covers, people rushing to work, buses groaning to life, and I realized something simple but profound. I was okay, not fixed, not complete, not magically healed, but okay, and that was enough. The scar was forming not as a mark of damage but as a map of survival, a reminder that I had loved deeply, had let go gently, and had continued living, not in spite of the loss but because of what the loss had taught me about myself. And in that quiet morning light I felt something I had not expected, not hope for reconciliation, not longing for the past, but a quiet curiosity about the future. Whoever I was becoming in this new life might one day cross paths with whoever she was becoming, and when that happened we would both be whole, not have searching for completion but complete people, choosing connection freely without need or desperation. That thought did not excite me or scare me, it simply settled in my chest like truth, warm and steady, and for the first time in months I smiled, not for anyone, not to hide pain, but because in that moment I was genuinely at peace with the silence and with the space between us. It was not the end of the story, but it was the necessary middle, the quiet stretch where roots grow deep beneath the soil, unseen but essential for whatever might bloom later when the time was right. Morning after he left, she woke up in their bed alone for the first time in 3 years. Sunlight streamed through the window, hitting the empty space beside her where he had slept. She did not cry, she did not reach for her phone to call him back. Instead she sat up slowly, pulled the blanket around her shoulders and just breathed. The silence felt heavy at first, like a weight pressing down on her chest, but as the minutes passed something shifted. The silence began to feel different, not empty but spacious, like a room she had finally unlocked after years of walking past its closed door. She got up, made coffee for one, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the steam rising from the mug. She had asked for this independence, she had known it would hurt, but she had not known it would feel so vast, so uncharted. She had spent years being half of a pair, the girlfriend, the partner, the other half of us, and now she was just herself, a single entity with no one to reflect back who she was supposed to be. The first week was strange. She moved through their apartment like a visitor. Everything felt familiar but distant. She kept expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway, to see his shoes by the door, to turn and share a thought with someone who was not there. She caught herself setting 2 plates at dinner twice before she stopped the habit. She ate alone at the table. Some nights she ate standing over the sink, not out of sadness but because she could, because no one was watching and no one cared how she ate her dinner. After 10 days she called her boss and quit her job, the corporate position she had held for 4 years, the one with the corner office and the steady paycheck and the slow suffocation. She did not have another job lined up. She just knew she could not go back to that building, to those fluorescent lights, to the endless meetings where she nodded along while her soul quietly disappeared. She handed in her resignation, calmly packed her desk into a single box, and walked out without looking back. The first month of unemployment was terrifying, not financially, though she had savings, but existentially. Who was she without a title, without a routine, without a role to play? Each morning she woke up with no obligations, no meetings, no expectations, and the freedom felt like falling. She wandered the city aimlessly, visited museums she had always meant to see, sat in cafes for hours reading books she actually wanted to read, not the business bestsellers she used to force herself through. She felt unmoored, floating without anchor. One rainy afternoon in her 3rd week of freedom she ducked into a community center to escape the downpour. A flyer taped to the bulletin board caught her eye: pottery class, beginners welcome, Tuesdays and Thursdays 6 to 8 p.m. She almost walked past it, but something made her stop. She had never touched clay before, had never made anything with her hands beyond scribbling notes in meetings, but the image on the flyer, a simple brown bowl glazed in soft green, called to her in a way she could not explain. That Thursday she showed up nervous, in jeans and an old t-shirt she bought at a thrift store. The studio smelled of damp earth and warm kill. The instructor, a woman with silver hair and clay-stained hands, showed her to a wheel, demonstrated how to center a lump of wet gray clay between her palms, then left her to try it herself. Her first attempts were disasters. The clay wobbled, collapsed, splattered across the wheel and her arms. She laughed, a real laugh, not the polite chuckle she used in meetings, but a deep surprised sound that startled her. She tried again and again, each failure teaching her something about pressure, about patience, about letting the material guide her hands rather than forcing it into submission. By the end of the class her back ached, her nails were packed with clay, and she had produced one lopsided bowl with a crack running through its side, but as she held it in her hands something inside her settled. This was real, this was messy, imperfect, human. She had made something from nothing with her own hands. No spreadsheets, no presentations, no approval needed, just earth and water and motion. She went back the next week and the week after that. Pottery became her anchor, not a career, not a hobby, but a practice, a place where she could be fully present without thinking about who she used to be or who she should become. On the wheel there was only the spin, the wet clay, the pressure of her fingers, the quiet focus required to shape something beautiful from chaos. Months passed, seasons shifted. Outside the studio windows she stopped checking her phone for messages that never came. She stopped wondering if he was thinking about her. She simply lived each day as it came. Some days were hard, lonely days when the apartment felt too big and the silence too loud. On those days she went to the studio early and stayed late, letting the rhythm of the wheel soothe her restless mind. She met other artists at a gallery opening. A friend from pottery class invited her. She wore a dress she had not worn in years, the one he had always said made her eyes look green. She almost did not wear it, but then she did because it was her dress, not his memory of it. The artists were loud, passionate, messy. They talked about color and form and meaning without irony. They invited her to share a loft space with two of them, a sunlit place with high ceilings and paint splatters on the floorboards. She said yes without hesitation. Moving out of the apartment she had shared with him was harder than she expected, not because she missed him but because it was the last physical tie to that life. She packed slowly, folding clothes, placing books into boxes, wrapping dishes in newspaper, each item a memory she handled gently then released. She left the key on the counter and walked out without looking back. In the loft she slept on a mattress on the floor for weeks before buying a bed. She painted one wall deep blue because she could. She hung her growing collection of pottery on shelves, not perfect pieces but ones that held meaning. The first bowl she ever made, the vase with the intentional crack, the set of mugs glazed in sunset colors she had created during a week when everything felt possible. She dated briefly a photographer who loved capturing light on water. They went to galleries and drank wine on rooftops. He was kind, gentle, attentive, but after 6 weeks she realized she was performing again, being the girlfriend, the companion, the other half of a pair. She ended it gently over coffee, no drama, no tears, just a quiet recognition that she was not ready to merge her life with anyone else's, not yet, maybe not ever in the same way again. Spring came. She started selling her work at weekend markets, setting up a simple booth with unbleached linen and soft lighting. People touched her bowls, ran fingers over the glazes, asked about her process. She found she loved these small interactions, not as sales but as connections. A woman bought a mug because it reminded her of the sea. A man chose a plate for his daughter moving into her first apartment. These objects carried meaning beyond function, and she was the one giving them life. One afternoon as she glazed a set of mugs in cobalt blue, her hands moving automatically, her mind drifted to him, not with longing, not with regret, but with a deep quiet gratitude. She thought about the space he had given her, the respect he had shown by leaving without anger, without demands, without making her feel guilty for needing to grow. She realized then that what she had asked for had been an enormous request, and what he had given her had been an even more enormous gift: trust. She had not been running away from him, she had been running toward herself, and he had understood that enough to step aside. She thought about the person she had been when she asked for independence, anxious, uncertain, defined by relationships, and she compared that person to who she was now, still uncertain sometimes but comfortable with the uncertainty, still alone but not lonely, still becoming but no longer afraid of the becoming. She was not finding herself as if she had been lost and needed to be recovered. She was building herself piece by piece like the clay on her wheel, starting with nothing and adding layers of experience, courage, failure, joy, each layer shaping the next. She was learning to hold space for contradiction, to be both strong and soft, ambitious and content, alone and connected. The cobalt blue glaze pooled in the curves of the mugs catching the afternoon light. She set them aside to dry, thinking about how beauty often lived in imperfection, the slight warp in a rim, the unexpected drip of glaze, the fingerprint left behind. These were not flaws, they were evidence of a human hand, a life lived, not a machine producing identical copies. She thought about him then not as a lover, not as a loss, but as a chapter, a necessary part of her story that had ended not because it was bad but because it had served its purpose. They had loved each other well, and that love had included knowing when to let go. She did not know if they would ever speak again, did not know if she wanted that, but she knew she carried him with her not as a weight but as a lesson, as a reminder that real love sometimes means giving someone the freedom to become who they need to be, even when that becoming leads them away from you. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across her work table. She wiped her hands on her apron stained with a dozen colors of clay and glaze, and felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. She was not finished becoming, no one ever is, but she was no longer afraid of the process. She had jumped without a net as she had told him she would, and she had not fallen. She had learned to fly in her own way at her own pace, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Saturday morning market on Elm Street buzzed with life. Baskets of strawberries gleamed ruby red under the sun. Jars of honey caught the light like liquid gold. Children darted between stalls clutching sticky hands and bright balloons. The air smelled of fresh bread and blooming flowers, a symphony of ordinary joy. He had come for coffee beans, a simple errand, his routine now. After a year of rebuilding, he moved through the crowd easily, no longer a ghost but a person again, present in his own skin. He wore a soft cotton shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hands tucked in pockets as he walked, not searching for anything, just moving through the morning. Then he saw her. She stood behind a booth draped in unbleached linen, her hair shorter now with streaks of silver at the temples she had once hidden beneath dye. She wore faded overalls splattered with dried clay, her hands moving with a quiet confidence as she arranged bowls on a wooden shelf, each piece unique, earthy tones with subtle variations in glaze, the kind of imperfections that made them feel alive. For a moment he did not recognize her, not because she had changed beyond knowing, but because the person before him carried a different energy, a lightness he had never seen when they lived together. She was not performing, not trying to be anything for anyone, she simply was, and that being filled the space around her. Their eyes met across the crowd, not by accident. She had seen him first, her hands stilled mid-motion, a flicker of surprise, then recognition, then something softer, something like peace. He felt his breath catch, not from pain but from the sheer unexpectedness of this moment. After a year of silence, of honoring her request, of never reaching out, here she was, solid, real, breathing just 20 feet away. He did not look away, he did not pretend not to see her, that would have been a lie, and they had built their relationship on too much honesty for that, even at the end. So he walked toward her, not quickly, not hesitantly, just steadily, like a person approaching another person in a public place, nothing more, nothing less. Up close he saw the fine lines around her eyes, deeper now from laughter, not worry. Her skin glowed with health, not the tired pallor of late nights at an office. She wore no makeup, just herself, simple and whole. "These are beautiful," he said, his voice calm, no tremor, no hidden agenda. He picked up a small vase, its rim slightly uneven, the glaze a soft sea green. "I leave those in on purpose now," she replied, her voice the same but warmer, like it had been stretched and softened by time. "Perfection is lonely." He turned the vase in his hands, feeling its weight, the subtle texture where the glaze had pooled thicker in some places. He remembered how she used to obsess over details at work, how a single typo in a presentation would ruin her evening. Now she celebrated imperfection not as failure but as character. "You make these yourself?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. She nodded, gesturing to the shelves behind her. "Each piece tells a story, not in words but in shape, in color, in the moment it was born. Some days the clay wants to be a bowl, some days it fights you and becomes something else entirely. You learn to listen." He looked at her, really looked, not at the woman he had loved but at the person she had become. Her shoulders relaxed, her posture open, not guarded. She met his gaze without flinching, without the old habit of looking away when emotions ran deep. "How have you been?" he asked, the question simple, no hidden traps, no expectation of an answer. She did not owe him anything, not after what she had asked for and what he had given. "Good," she said honestly, "not perfect but good. I quit my job, the corporate one. I never told you that, but I think you knew I was unhappy." "I knew," he said. I took pottery classes at first just to fill time, then it became something else, a practice not a hobby. She gestured to the booth around them. I share a loft with 2 other artists. We sell at markets like this on weekends, sometimes galleries buy pieces. It is not much money but it is mine, it comes from my hands, not from a spreadsheet. He felt a swell of pride so sharp it surprised him. This was what he had wanted for her, even when it hurt, even when it meant losing her. He had wanted her to find this lightness, this purpose, and seeing it now felt like watching a seed he had helped plant finally break through the soil. I am glad, he said. The words carried no weight, no agenda, just truth. I am really glad. She studied his face then, as if reading the year etched in the new lines around his eyes, the calm that had settled in his posture. You look different too, she said, quieter. He nodded. I moved into a studio above a bookstore, small but mine. I took on more freelance work, started writing again just for myself, nothing big but it helps untangle things. You always wanted to write, she said, a small smile touching her lips. You used to talk about it late at night but never had time. I make time now, he replied. A customer approached the booth, a woman with a toddler on her hip admiring a set of mugs. He stepped back, giving space, watching how she interacted with the stranger, easy, patient, explaining the glazing process without condescension. When the woman left with 2 mugs wrapped carefully in paper, she turned back to him. Do you live nearby, he asked. 20 minutes by bus, she said. You? Walking distance, he said. Silence settled between them, not the heavy silence of their last conversation but something lighter, like 2 trees whose branches happen to touch in the wind. No pressure, no demand, just a moment of connection. I never looked you up, she said after a moment. I thought about it sometimes, especially early on, but I did not want to violate what I had asked for. Independence means no checking, no waiting, no safety net, even a digital one. I know, he said. I did not look you up either. She nodded, understanding, passing between them without words. They had both honored the space, they had both done the hard work alone, and in that mutual respect something new was possible, not a return, not a redo, but a recognition. I should let you work, he said, glancing at the steady stream of market-goers approaching her booth. She hesitated just a second, then reached beneath the table and pulled out a small card, simple cream-colored paper with an address, a date and a time written in careful script. The corner market, Saturday mornings 10 to 2. In case you want to see the new pieces, she said. No pressure, just an invitation. He took the card, his fingers brushing hers briefly, a spark not of romance but of shared history. 2 people who had loved each other well, meeting again after weathering separate storms. Thank you, he said, folding the card carefully into his pocket. Thank you, she replied, for everything. He nodded once, turned and walked back through the market, the crowd parting around him, the sun warm on his shoulders. He did not look back, but he did not need to. He carried the image with him, her hands covered in clay, her smile easy, her eyes clear. He had feared this moment for a year, feared he would feel regret or longing or the sharp pain of loss, but instead he felt something gentler, something like gratitude. They had both grown in the silence, they had both become more themselves, and seeing her now felt not like an ending but like a quiet confirmation that their choice, however painful, had been right. He bought his coffee beans from a vendor 2 stalls down, the beans dark and fragrant. He paid without rushing, his mind quiet for the first time in months, not empty but peaceful. He walked home, the card a small weight in his pocket, not a promise, not a plan, just a possibility. And for the first time since leaving her door that final night, he felt no urgency, no need to decide anything. The future could wait. He was exactly where he needed to be in this moment, walking through a sunlit street, carrying the memory of her smile like a gift, not a burden. And somewhere behind him she watched him go, not with sadness but with a quiet fullness in her chest. 2 people who had loved each other enough to let go, now meeting as strangers who recognized each other not as who they had been but as who they had become. And in that recognition there was no demand, only the simple human truth that some connections change shape but do not disappear. They transform like clay on a wheel, becoming something new, something stronger, something beautiful in its own imperfect way.